Okay, we are live. Uh, we had a little bit of a setback, but we are here.
Because life happens, man.
Life happens. And we are here to talk about Scream 6 and
Yeah, we
its
are.
script writing theme. Yeah. So, okay. Um, so brief summary of Scream 6. The survivors of the Woodsboro murders moved to New York City for a fresh start, but must relive their nightmare when Ghostface reemerges to torment them. All
Now,
right.
it doesn't have to be stated because it's technically in the title, but this is the 6th installment of the Scream franchise, and it's important for this review and for you to understand at least how I'm going to review it. I can't speak for Sako, to understand the entirety of the franchise because everything is interconnected one way or another.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is what happens
Okay.
when you have like coffee right before you start recording. So here's the gist of the Scream franchise in a nutshell. The gist is you have Sidney Prescott, who we all know is the starlet from the first movie, and she was in a relationship with a guy named Billy Loomis. Now it boils down to Billy Loomis, and this is a spoiler for all the Scream movies. Billy Loomis was trying to get close to Sidney out of spite. Year prior, he killed Sidney's mother, framed a guy, Cotton Weary, and all of this was because Sidney's mother had an affair with Billy's father, which caused Billy's mother to leave. So Billy didn't have his mom in this life anymore. He was upset about this, and all this stuff went into motions because of that. That leads into Scream 2, where of course at the end of Scream 1, Billy, along with his partner Stu Macher, are killed by Sidney. In Scream 2, vengeance is had by Billy's mother, Mrs. Loomis, because Sidney killed her son. She picked up this dude named Mickey, and they are eventually vanquished. In Scream 3, you had a movie, because it's really important to understand that, and I'll get into this more here in a bit because it is relevant. Inside Scream, there is a franchise that mirrors Scream.
Stab.
It's the Stab franchise.
Yeah.
So the director of the third Stab movie turns out, his name is Roman Bridger, turns out that he is the illegitimate son and the older half-brother of Sidney Prescott.
Oh.
And because Sidney's mother left Hollywood and went to go do her own thing, leaving everything else behind, including him. And when he found her in his, adulthood, she rejected him. He was a reflection of a really bad Hollywood time. In Vengeance, he, as a director, directs. So he's the one that actually encouraged Billy and Stu to commit the murder against Maureen Prescott in the first place. That set everything in motion. That ends Scream 3. That's the end of the original franchise. 10 years later, Scream 4 has Sidney's cousin Jill. Sidney's cousin Jill wants that same level of popularity and fame. I'm in a smaller box. Popularity and fame that Sidney has. There we go. And I like this better. Not so
Okay.
in my face.
Okay.
Jill wants that. She has a buddy. I forget his name. Something with a C. Chuck. He's played by McCulkin. And Charlie Walker. That was his name. Charlie Walker. They wanted to give Jill the opportunity to be the same level of fame as Sidney. That fails, and Sidney prevails. We now go into Scream 5, which is more relevant to Scream 6 because these two movies are directly connected. We have new leads in the Carpenter sisters, Tara Carpenter and Samantha Carpenter. Samantha being the older one. And Samantha, it turns out, as we find out in the first movie, she is the illegitimate daughter of Billy Loomis. Billy Loomis, because he wasn't getting any from Sydney, had sex with another woman. She got pregnant, and they had Samantha. This all takes place right before, obviously, he dies in the old movies. This was a secret that nobody knew until Samantha stumbled upon it, and it was that public revelation that her real father was Billy Loomis and not the guy who thought he was her dad that caused her parents to split. This is why her younger sister's father, left home. And of course, being connected to Billy Loomis, these two people, Amber and Richie was the main villain there. Richie Kirsch, who's Samantha's boyfriend, wanted to revamp the franchise. And I'll get into that here in a sec, because this is all relevant information to make this movie make sense. All of this matters. Like literally every bit of the babbling that I've been doing this whole time, all of it is relevant to understand this movie. And I'll pause until we get to the writing to reflect on that a little bit deeper. But Richie and Amber needed to revamp the franchise because the franchise just became like a money grab after a while, the Stab franchise. So they felt that it was only relevant, the only way to succeed in this was to give new real life events for the new Stab movies to be based on, because that's when the movies were good. And that leads into Scream 6. There's your entire Scream franchise. Holy shit. Okay.
That should be a short. Just you.
Actually, I literally just thought, like, we should make that a short.
Yeah.
The Moon gives you the entire Scream franchise from 1 to 5 in however long the fuck that was.
Yeah.
Roughly 7 minutes.
Roughly 7 minutes.
All right. I'm going to let Sako talk because I've babbled for 7 minutes.
All right. So we've kind of like shuffled around the categories. If you haven't seen an episode of Sako and the Moon reviewing movies, then let me walk you through it a little bit. We have 4 categories: the theme, the production, the writing, and the characterization. And there are like subjects underneath those categories that kind of help us tear apart this movie.
Did you mention theme?
Yes.
Okay. I make sure.
The theme is first.
Okay. We shifted theme to the beginning. Okay, cool.
We shifted theme to the beginning. So message it within theme, right? Mm-hmm. So we have the message. I think it is chosen family over blood family.
Yeah, and that's really big over the Scream franchise, because you start to see, particularly in 5 and 6, you have who are now referred to as the Core 4. Mm-hmm. Those are the 4 survivors of the first, of Scream 5, which is just called officially Scream 2022. Which again, I'm gonna get into a little bit of all of that. Everything is so meticulous, but I'll talk about that in writing. But yeah, you have the Core 4, which are these fraternal twins, Mindy and Chad, and then the Carpenter sisters, Samantha and Tara. That's the Core 4. And trauma has bonded those 4 together. They were already kind of cool, but they had really bonded over this trauma. And then you had, of course, Sydney, Gail Weathers, and other miscellaneous people who have been kind of pieced together just because of all this stuff happening in a matter of circumstance. And yeah, that bond has been so much stronger. But that's not to take away the bonds of that family, that cursed family. Woo.
That cursed family. It's a doozy.
It's a doozy.
So maybe chosen family over blood maybe isn't the message. Maybe chosen family is definitely a theme.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I guess an appropriate message would be family over everything.
Family over everything. Yeah.
Because in the end, regardless if it's the blood family or the chosen family, it's the lengths that they're willing to go through for said family.
Right.
Spoiler, because we're obviously reviewing it. This is a spoilered review. There are 3 killers, asterisks, because I have a very important question later on.
Yeah, me too.
And so there's 3 killers, asterisks, and they're all related. Turns out it is the officer Bailey, and then there is Evan, I think was his name, and then Quinn. Turns out that they
his name.
Yeah, his
name. He reveals that it is not his name.
Yeah, so it's Chad's roommate, and then Samantha and Tara's roommate are actually brother and sister. They were the brother and sister of Richie Kirch, who was the killer in the last movie. They are now, along with their father, Officer Bailey, they are going to avenge Ricky's death because Samantha killed him. Rightfully so, but they're avenging the death. And so again, there's that blood family versus the core 4. And then you can add in Kirby because they're all Ghostface survivors. And so between Gail and Sydney and Kirby, the Carpenters, and the Meeks Martins, that's the twins, the Meeks Martins. They are all survivors, and they're bonded as survivors. So that's chosen family. And the links that either side's willing to go through for the sake of defeating the other is strong. So I'd go with family over everything.
I think that's fair. Tone / mood. I think it is 1 part fluff to 1 part slasher.
It's interesting with Scream 6 because I'm such a big fan of the franchise, so I analyze like all of it so deeply.
All of it, yeah.
Comparatively, this has a much grittier, darker tone than the other movies do.
Okay.
That's part of the New York setting, but it is. I think that the stabs are slightly more visceral. The tone is darker, and I like it. Some people may not like the shift that Radio Silence, the production team behind it, the director group, they had done with the franchise in 5 and 6. I do. I think it's perfectly fine. The mood stays dark, but has strong levels of levity because there is a strong line of comedy that has to exist in a Scream franchise. It's one of the rules of a Scream franchise.
Yeah. I liked the and this is full of spoilers and stuff like that, right?
We're spoiling everything.
We're spoiling everything. I forgot what I was gonna say. But the love story was super cute, and I didn't do backstory.
I already gave the backstory to the entire franchise.
Yes, you did. But
like I said, it is relevant. Just kind of hang out. Just remember what I said. Hang on. That was relevant.
Photos, cast.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for trivia.
Okay.
Which I normally talk about in the backstory. After the credits. So apparently there is a stinger after the credits.
The post-credit scene about post-credit scenes?
Yeah.
I am one of those people who on release day saw this first show like 1 p.m. and I stayed in the theater in case there was a post-credit scene. I was one of those people. She was talking to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
The post-credit scene, I was giving Sako space to tell you what it was, but the post-credit scene is just Mindy saying not every movie needs a post-credit scene. And then it cuts. And then that's it. That's literally all it is. Which is so Scream franchise.
Apparently, Courtney Cox was the first cast member to sign up to return as Gale Weathers. She jokingly said that she'd even play her for free because she loved playing Gale.
It's my favorite Courtney Cox role.
Yeah, me too.
And it's such a significant movie franchise for me. One of the things that they talk about in Scream 5 during the infamous monologue, every Scream movie has a monologue. And in this monologue of Scream 5, they talk about how the Stab franchise is some people's introduction to horror when they were younger. It's how they fell in love with the genre. And that is so true of the Scream franchise. Scream is the first horror movie that I cared about. Probably not the first one I saw, but the first one that I saw and cared about. Ghostface is probably my favorite horror villain, one of my favorite horror villains. And I will stay loyal to the Scream franchise regardless. It's I should go get my Woodsboro jacket. I should be wearing my Woodsboro jacket right now. But that involves me getting up and leaving. And
No. You don't got to do that. Yeah.
I'm not going. That involves getting out of the chair. I'm going to get out of the chair.
All right. So how do we feel about the theme? Like, do we give it a star?
Oh, yeah. This is... Come on.
Oh, you got a button.
What's your favorite scary movie?
With the phone. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This definitely gets a star. A spoiler. This is a 4-star movie for me. So we're just...
okay. We're just going to say it's... I don't know if it's a 4-star.
I don't know for her. It's 4 stars
I don't know
for me.
So
that's where I'm coming from. So any variation of that will come from Sako.
Okay.
And we'll see if she can talk me out of something.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. So theme. Oh, that's right. I had banners.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Theme. So theme gets a star at 1 out of 4 so far.
Thus far, yes.
Let's move on to production. We have art direction. I felt like it was typical Hollywood. The sound engineering was particularly good. When Mindy is on the train and she's having that panic attack while she's seeing multiple ghost face masks in the crowd.
Because it's Halloween.
It's Halloween.
It's Halloween, so there are the train scene. I'll get into this when Sako's done. But the train scene has a bunch of people in costumes going out to miscellaneous parties and whatnot. And because of the legend of Ghostface, the selling of the mask and the costume is quite popular. Thus, everyone. There's a lot of people who are actually wearing it. So there's a lot of anxiety for the people who are actively running from a Ghostface killer being on an enclosed train with a bunch of people dressed up as Ghostface. I can only imagine that level of anxiety.
Yeah.
The sound engineering in that scene is that
And
scene in its own right is so
the
great.
sound, yeah, exactly. The sound of her heart pounding, of her blood rushing, of the din of the train, and I thought it was really well done.
And the art direction for this particular scene, which is one of the reasons why I was like, this scene is so good to point out in production. So when you had a costume designer, the costume designer said that the initial thought you would assume is that all these are going to be like Halloween costumes, and she had her team, and they were getting ready to make like what would be for them regular kind of costumes, right? Professionally made, studio quality. They're like, but wait a minute, it clicks. Wait a minute, these aren't characters in a movie. These are people, regular people who would have otherwise in the movie made these costumes at home.
Maybe.
So the ones that weren't bought, like the Ghostface costumes, would be homemade costumes. The Babadook face paint would look roughly done or look generic, look like a dude did it right before he left out of the house. Because that's what it would look like if me or Sako or you at home were to just do the Babadook and run out the door, go to a party. We're not going to put Hollywood production value into that. It's going to look like we did it at home. So they had to change direction. And the specific instruction was make it look like the regular person made it at home. That's why you have all those costumes in this scene that look kind of generic. It's intended to look that way. That's on purpose because these are costumes those people would have made at home. And there's a ton of Easter eggs in this scene. You have Wes Craven movies like Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that. You also have Radio Silence, who are the directors of 5 and 6. They also did Ready or Not.
Oh.
The movie Ready or Not. So these are the same production people, the same directors behind Ready or Not. So when you see that Samara Weaving, her character in that movie, it's got the bloody wedding dress and the bullets along. That's a nod to their movie Ready or Not. In fact, that's how they got Samara Weaving to do the opening.
Oh.
Because Samara Weaving in the opening, that's the teacher from the opening of the movie, and she plays the starring role in Ready or Not, and that's her real accent. So there's some more trivia for you.
Yeah, snap. Any other notes about art direction?
Art direction, particularly, no. I think we kind of inadvertently talked about makeup and props. I don't know if you had any more to do for makeup and props.
I mean, I guess it's okay. It's hard to make a sucking chest wound. You know, like, it was a little more visceral than the previous movies. And I feel
Also
like the makeup didn't... I feel like the makeup kind of supported it, but not enough for my taste.
So in what scene do you feel like, of course we will 86 this opinion from the subway scene for the aforementioned, it was intentional. So what would you say, like what's an example of how it didn't quite meet your standard?
The stab wounds were super smooth. I don't know if that is to show that the knife is super sharp.
More or less.
But there's a lot of twisting of knives in this movie.
That is less. I feel like that has more to do with the story, and a lot of this is explained in the monologue. Which I like how the monologue had to take place at a certain point in time, and of course this is more about writing, but there's something that's said in the monologue where in this particular point of the franchise. Things have to be bloodier, more visceral, has to invoke more. So when you're this deep into the story, you have to keep doing something different. I see the twisting of the knife. There's, I think, one part where the knife goes in and they're actually like pulling the knife up. And this is to create a more visceral response at home for us watching. Because this is more personal. This has to be this level of the franchise. It has to be more visceral. It has to be bloodier. There has to be more to react at home.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that has more to do with the story being told than just directors feeling like it. Like this isn't Terrifier. Terrifier,
which I refuse to watch.
I don't blame you.
I have to be in a mood for that kind of movie, I think.
And
I haven't found that mood yet.
Terrifier. I'll say this because this is not about Terrifier, but Terrifier is, and I'll explain why I'm mentioning it. Terrifier is bad. Terrifier 2 is, oh my God. Like,
yeah, that's what I hear.
If you can't get through Terrifier, I haven't seen 3, but if you can't get through 1, then
you're not getting through 2.
Don't even acknowledge that 2 exists. And I heard that 3 is even worse. I heard that the first 10 minutes of 3 is unbearable to the point where people who saw 1 and 2 and went to the theater to see 3 left.
Whoa.
If they didn't just throw up in the early part of the movie. Like there were several reports of people throwing up in the first 10 minutes of Terrifier 3. And the reason why I mentioned Terrifier 3 and how gross and visceral that was is that there's a lot of scenes in Terrifier, particularly 2. I can't speak on 3 because I didn't see it. But there's a lot that happened in Terrifier to invoke a response to show you how dark this character is. But a lot more happened in 2 because COVID happened, cut production, and it gave the director, who was the writer-director, the opportunity to think of how do I make this essentially more fucked up? And that was a director writing choice. This has more to do with the actual plot and through the story. And so I don't hold those two in the same light.
No, I wouldn't either. Yeah.
But it is gross, it is visceral. But it doesn't happen in every scene. So
right.
You get space. And not every kill is super dark.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to
like Mindy on the subway is subtle, really bold too. But like Chad stabbing is hard to watch because he's just being held there. Like you got a ghost face on this side, a ghost face on this side. They're holding his arms out, and then with their free hand, they're just pin cushioning this guy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Spoiler, he survives.
Spoiler, he survives.
Oh, side note in the trivia spot, there's a lot of they spoke about how there was a lot of criticism about Chad surviving that level of stabbing. And they're like, we thought about killing him off, but they said that there are reports of real life stabbings to that severe level where you're just punctured and you survive. And the example that they led to was the Slender Man stabbing, where those 3 girls went out in the woods, and 2 of the girls went out. They went in the woods to set up the 3rd, and because Slender Man told them to. These are real life events. This isn't the movie. Real life events. 2 girls took their friend out in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night, and they stabbed the shit out of her. Oh. And somehow, and because they saw Slender Man, and Slender Man told them to, and the girl survived and was able to turn her friends in.
Wow. Yeah.
So that kill, as unrealistic as it seems, is based on some real life events, such as that Slender Man killing.
Spooky.
So that's one of those things that led to a production choice whether to make this sort of a writing / production, where they kept the kill in and they allowed him to live in the very, very end, because I mean it's a viable, semi-survivable kind of thing under rare circumstances.
I thought that the way they handled his both Tara's reaction to Chad getting stabbed repeatedly.
Yeah, it's weird the things you say during a horror review, isn't it? How they handled that? How
they handled both of them, I thought was well done.
I agree.
Which makes me think of the cute love story between Chad and Tara. I'm not normally into like love stories in horror movies, but this one, like, I just felt like it hit home. And
I feel like it does, yeah.
Like it seems realistic. They have a history together, and there's obvious chemistry. They have a trauma bond. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the chemistry between the two was undeniable.
Yeah.
So they, like, kudos to their acting, because they made it.
Mason Gooding is so good. And Jenna Ortega, you can't.
Ortega,
you cannot speak ill of. Not around me. You can't. Don't you say nothing crazy about Ortega around me. But no, like you look at the core four, and Mindy is gay. Samantha has sort of like a parental thing over her, because she used to babysit them, so she has like this sort of a authority older sister kind of relationship with them. So that would only really leave, considering that Tara's straight, the only relationship you'd really have there of the core four or the survivors of the fifth movie would be Chad and Tara. And it would make sense that, particularly after trauma bonding, through the first movie, their first movie. Yeah, that's why I keep thinking about, like, their first movie. So through Scream 5, it makes sense that they would, particularly that Chad would have a sense of protection over Tara. Mm-hmm. And through that sense of protection versus he is my protector, that something romantic would come from that. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. Also, I feel like it replaces the Gale Dewey love story that was told through 1 and 5. Yeah. Which is how David Arquette,
which they hinted at in this movie, to try and get at Gale. Yeah. They bring up Dewey, and I thought that was a great callback.
On top of that, also all the Scream people know that's how Courtney Cox and David Arquette met in real life, on the set of Scream 1, and in their Scream 1 love story, they fell in love for real, and they actually got married. And then Scream became sort of a mirror of their actual relationship. That picture of Dewey and Gale that you keep seeing in all the movies on everybody's book stands and whatever, that is an actual picture of David Arquette and Courtney Cox from their real life in their relationship.
That's so awesome. Okay, cinematography.
Absolutely lovely. I love.
It's professional.
It is
like it's almost generic in its professionalism.
It's clean. It's one of those things where
it is clean.
You can get. I would compare the cinematography of Scream 6 to a cheeseburger.
Go on.
You can do a lot of fancy stuff with a beef patty and cheese and miscellaneous toppings and whatnot. But there's nothing really beats just a really good, well-made cheeseburger.
Mm-hmm.
Good quality beef, well seasoned, good cheese, nice bun, maybe a little ketchup and mayo, maybe some mustard, but just a good quality cheeseburger, no frills, kind of like we talked about in the menu. Just a good quality cheeseburger. Sometimes it's exactly what somebody needs. Is it plain? Yeah. Is it kind of generic? Yeah. Is it pretty standard? Yeah, but it's just so good that you really don't need to do anything else to that. And there's a lot that was done in this movie like that.
Mm-hmm.
The
I have
scene where
to.
they're crossing the ladder, like the
Yeah.
effort that went into that, not just in the filming of it, but in the producing of it. So there's an actual alleyway in New York that this is based off of, right? And they were in that actual alleyway for part of this scene. But when it starts getting risky for legal reasons, they couldn't actually have their actors, 6 stories up on a ladder. So the art direction had to recreate this actual alleyway in a soundstage.
Oh, wow.
So how good that scene is through transition, and they had to blend it together. Like, so that when the girl falls off the ladder, she only actually falls like 10 feet onto a crash pad.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an actual, like, the level of to recreate that alley. Like it's so good that it had to be acknowledged. That our team deserves so much respect, and to film that in such a way to where that transition is almost undistinguishable must be acknowledged. I can't help but give a star to that level of attention to detail and the effort put in for all the realism of that movie. Both the things that are done so crisp and so professionally, and the things that are done so homemade because it all makes sense in context.
I think that's profound. And you have convinced me to give it a star for production. Absolutely. So that's 2 out of 4 stars. Let's move on to writing, which
So
is
this is my franchise, man.
This is going to be the lion's share. This is going to be a long episode. I know it.
That's fine. I'm in for it. We're not two-parting this one. We're just going to go in.
Yeah. Dialogue. I thought most of it was genuine. Maybe some of it was ad-libbed. The monologue at the end is goofy as fuck.
Yeah.
So it took me out of the story. It really did.
That is
even though he's revealing big chunks of the story, it took me out of the experience. Like
there are 2 major monologues in a typical Scream movie. There's like the Randy monologue.
Mm-hmm.
Randy Meeks is the character from the first 2 movies that was the horror movie expert, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was the one that would explain to us, to the group and to the audience, the rules of a franchise. And we have to understand that the point of Scream is to be a reflection of horror at the time. Scream operates as a mirror of the horror industry. So that is one of the reasons why the Scream movies had recreated the Stab movies. So just to follow, so that this is understood, the events of Scream take place. Gail writes a book about what she went through in the events of Scream.
Mm-hmm.
This becomes a book called, an in-universe book called The Woodsboro Murders.
Mm-hmm.
And someone bought the movie rights to The Woodsboro Murders and made a movie called Stab. At the beginning of Scream 2, the opening kill takes place in the movie theater as 2 people are going to go see Stab. Stab is a recreation of Scream. Stab 1 is Scream 1 in universe. So while we are witnessing Scream the people in Scream are
Witnessing.
witnessing stab events,
Mhm.
or events that would eventually be stab movies, which is the
Right.
motivation in Scream 5, because since the franchise went off the rails, I think the story they told was Sidney Prescott sued and said they couldn't use her likeness anymore. So they just had to start making stuff up to keep the franchise going.
Mhm.
So what's Richie and Amber wanted to do was recreate new Ghostface real life events for future stab movies to be based on. That's the motivation in Scream 5. So understanding all of that, a lot of what you're seeing is tropey. The writing is intentionally tropey because Scream as a whole is a tropey franchise. It's a franchise about tropes. Scream
Yeah.
5 is called Scream because of requels, where the requels would come out at some sort of in-universe remake of the first in the series,
Mhm.
and they give it the same name. Halloween did the same thing. Candyman did the same thing. There are so many I can't even remember, like all the different franchises that have just had brand new movies and just called them whatever the first one was called, not whatever number it would be in the franchise or some
But it's a
subtitle.
requel. It's not a. It's not
Yeah,
a
it's not a
remake.
sequel and it's not a remake, which Scream 5 specifies. Um, Randy Meeks is alive in Screams 1 and 2 and gives a monologue about the rules of a horror movie. Then there's the rules of a sequel. And then he dies in Scream 2, which leads to the videotape in Scream 3, where he gives the rules of a trilogy. In Scream 4, I think the person who gives the rules is Kirby. I think Kirby's the in-universe expert in Scream 4. So she gets like the rules of a remake or whatever, or talks about movies made after some period of time.
Mhm.
Because that's why they made Scream 4, because there was a thing where they were reawakening old franchises for money grabs like 10 some odd years later. That was a trend of the time, and Scream was reflecting on that. Scream 5, just called Scream, and Scream 2022 to distinguish it, talks about the requel, which is not a sequel, not a remake. It's a in-universe episodic version or addition to an existing franchise where part of it, if not all of it, is still canon. Think back to how we described Candyman and why we did a comparison of Candyman.
Right.
That's why we did a comparison of Candyman, because Candyman 2018 was a requel of the original Candyman.
So you need to watch both to really get the whole story.
Yeah, so in Scream 6, Mindy, who did the monologue in Scream 5, because she's actually the niece of Randy Meeks. Her mother is Randy's sister. So that's how that connection. We meet Randy's sister in Scream 3. She delivers the videotape to the group. And then we see her again reprise the role as Mindy and Chad's mother. We don't know who the father is. There's some theories, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So there's that monologue, which, by the way, was fantastically written. That interaction in Mindy's monologue was fantastic. She had to memorize that whole thing, and apparently she delivered it like a fucking champ.
She did it again. She did it again in 6. Like,
well, I'm talking about 6, but she did it awesome in 5. And there's a lot to memorize in that
it's
monologue.
a lot to
and
memorize, but she did it.
Jasmine Savoy Brown, I think is her name. And she is a fantastic actress. Screams 5 and 6 have made me respect her as an actress without having seen any of the rest of her work. She's so good as Mindy. She makes Mindy such a fantastic character. She will probably be your favorite Scream franchise character if you are honest with yourself, and that's perfectly fine. Doesn't have to be Sydney. Doesn't have to be Gail. Doesn't have to be Dewey. It should be Mindy, because Mindy is so good as a character. But the other monologue, the one that took you out, is the killer's monologue, as most horror movies have. Particularly horror movies, slashers,
or thrillers.
Teen slashers usually have somebody who explains the plot at the end, why their motivations and whatnot. And I can see where that would otherwise take you out because it was kind of goofy. Officer Bailey changed character once he's revealed as being one of the ghost faces, and he turns into this really, I think he was going for sadistic, but he just looked goofy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Officer Bailey didn't deliver the way I kind of wish. Not like Billy and Stu did, not like Mickey did. Now there's kind of that trend. Your Stews, your Mickeys, your Ambers, where someone is kind of goofy and sadistic, and I think that's what Bailey was going for. Ethan was the name, not Evan. It was Ethan. Mm-hmm. Ethan tried the same thing, and it didn't work.
It didn't work. Yeah.
But the rest of the dialogue, the interactions between people,
the levity scenes I thought were particularly well done. It kind of like solidified their bond.
Like when Quinn interrupts Tara and Chad.
Yeah.
That little exchange there was so good. Go back and just find it and watch it. You'll know what I'm talking about as soon as you see it. And it's moments like that take away from the horror for just a moment. It reminds you that we are following the story of real people who are going through a real life trauma, and they're leaning on each other for comfort, for safety, and they are who they are to each other. Mm-hmm. And that's what good writing should do. It should make you really care about those characters.
And I think they did just that. Like, they made you care. And like, I didn't watch like 3 through 5. I watched 1, and then I watched part of 2 and didn't finish it. But yeah, I coming at it from a standpoint of not having seen the rest of the series, they hinted enough at the previous events that even I could enjoy the movie.
There's enough to catch up. There's just enough to make reference as all these are connected. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a point where you can do too much catch up, where it's like you're just retelling the old movie again. Don't do that. Writing tip: if you're going to create multiple series, you should be able to make enough references in your later works to your earlier works to where people can remember, but not that they feel like they're rereading the same product over again. One thing we didn't talk about in production, we probably should have, was the shrine.
Oh yeah.
One of the ending scene takes place in this theater, which turned out to be Richie's shrine to the franchise. That's how obsessed he was with Stab. And you had elements from all the previous Stab movies. So for us, all the previous Scream movies, including like an onstage shrine to all of the 9 previous killers. Asterisks.
Yeah.
And I will get to the asterisks here in a little bit. I promise. Before the end of the episode, I promise I'll talk about the asterisks.
Okay.
Because there's a really important question I have to ask Sako at the very end of this. That goes to the asterisks. But all of the 9 killers that have been Billy, Stu, Mrs. Loomis, Mickey, Roman, Jill, Charlie. Well, not yet. Charlie, Richie, and Amber. I was doing it in order. Mm-hmm. The 9 previous Ghostface killers. Asterisks. All are on stage with their suits, and part of the storytelling is that they're leading clues, and the clues that are being left behind were the masks of those 9 killers in descending order.
Mhm.
Starting with Charlie and Richie and Amber, all the way down to Stu and Billy. The point of this countdown, as Officer Bailey would tell us in his monologue, is that they want to frame Sam as the killer, because there's a rumor that they had started that she was actually the responsible one of the one responsible for the Woodsboro murders in the previous movie, but just framed their son, which is not true. But that was the point. It was a rumor. They wanted to change the narrative a bit because they said that nowadays, if you want to kill somebody, you can't just kill them. You have to kill their character. You have to kill them, kill their people's, the public opinion of them. So put out negative things on social media. Let things go viral, even if you sway the truth a little bit and lie and kind of cherry pick parts of the truth that fit your narrative. Sort of confirmation bias. You give people an opinion and then you feed them all the things that feed that bias, that confirm that bias. Hence the name. I don't know where they would have got that in modern day real life news cycles. I don't know where they would have come up with that at all. But in general, that's the way to destroy a person now. You have to kill their character and then kill them. Otherwise, they'll just be memorialized otherwise.
You make a martyr out of them.
More or less, yeah. So that's the gist of 6.
How about pacing? I thought the pacing was perfect.
I didn't think it was perfect. I think it was slightly off. There are parts of it that were kind of slow. There's there are scenes that I didn't think were immediately necessary. They didn't hurt the movie. I just don't think they helped the movie as much as they thought. The park scene where we are trying to lure Ghostface in to the park to attack the Carpenters. Yeah. We could have just. We didn't need that.
We didn't need that scene. Yeah.
It served nothing. It was supposed to be the prelude into the attack on Gale Weathers. But it was just like we could have had another clue that was more direct and then just cut straight to that. Draw that scene out. So I think it was like 5 minutes we didn't need. And all it did was lead us to Tara and Samantha still in a cop car to go exactly where they knew they were going to go. How they recognized that as Gale's address, I don't know. I think that whole scene was faulty to me.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't so much to the point where it was a problem. It just didn't help. Also, that scene's like broad daylight. It looks like they were out at like 2 p.m. And by the time the Carpenter sisters get to the other side of town, it's like 9-10 o'clock at night. We'll see. It's October, so it
could be 8.
It could have been 8, but that's still 5 hours later, 6 hours later, possibly. At the very earliest, it's like 4 to 5 hours later. And surely a cop car with its lights and sirens going, it's not going to take 4 hours to get from one end of New York to the other. I've never been to New York and I've never been in that kind of traffic, but surely a police car, with lights and sirens shouldn't take 4 hours minimum to get across town. And neither of them had a cell phone to call Gale to warn her.
No, she called while Gale was on. So Samantha called Gale while Gale was on the phone, while she was on her house phone.
I must have ignored that part because I didn't care enough. And again, it's because the park scene kind of took me out. I just knew that they had, and for me, I'm like, keep calling. I'm the kind of person, like, if you call me once, I might ignore. But if you keep calling me, part of me is going to be like, all right, I'm gonna check on this. And I don't see why Gale would ever ignore a phone call from the Carpenter sisters. Even if she's in the middle of talking to Ghostface. Even if you're in the middle of talking to Ghostface, because what we've established about Gail's character is that she is all about the story. And she would be like, oh, please, because she hung up on Ghostface at one point and never decided to call. Well, the point she hung up on Ghostface was actually really, really smart. She hung up on Ghostface to hit redial so that the Ghostface phone would ring so they'd know where he was. That was pretty smart. That trick is used a couple of times in the franchise, but I digress. I feel like over the course of that much time, somebody would have called and she'd answer the phone. I feel like there was a point in time
I
where
think it made sense because she was talking to Ghostface when Samantha was calling.
Right,
So
but mind you how dark it was when
it was dark.
She was just chilling. Mind you, there's a point where she's talking to her boyfriend and she's just chilling at the house. How much time has passed from broad daylight to that damn dark? Now, it wasn't twilight. It wasn't like dawn. It was, or dusk. It was like a lot of time has passed just by the lighting. And all of this is before the Ghostface call. No phone call? No warning? Like, hey, Gail, I think Ghostface is heading your way. Or he's there or something. Get the fuck out. Something.
That was the intention.
Yeah, and but there was so much time that should have passed from the falling of the sun before the Ghostface call. It doesn't match the timing. So I could see where someone would have issue with that. But if you ignore just the outside timing, then yeah, you can go with the scene. It's fine.
Okay, so star for writing ?
I would still give it a star for writing because the story was still overall a good Scream movie. The monologue that Mindy, and probably more about the direction or the acting than anything else. Let me get closer to the microphone. And the writing was good. The story was good. The way that they revamped the franchise in 5 to mirror 1. And then turned 6, which is the second in the new series, to match Scream 2. So if you call this like the new trilogy, starting at 5, part 2 of the new trilogy matched part 2 of the old trilogy the same way that part 1 of the new trilogy matched part 1 of the original trilogy. So to do that in a way that wasn't copy paste, you can't ignore the way that they weaved in some of the story elements. I think that was well enough to warrant a star.
I think for meta plot things, alone, I love world building, and the meta plot was the pacing on the meta plot was great.
It's like,
it took 4 decades to, like tell the whole story up to this point. But I thought they didn't stray from the content. They didn't stray from the storyline and continued it like legit.
And they gave the surviving characters time to age. For example, you have the interaction of Kirby and Gale, where they met in Scream 4, which was 2011, which would have been 12 years prior to the events in this movie. So now you have Kirby 12 years older, so she would have been about 18 in Scream 4. Because she's a high school senior. So she's about 17, 18 years old. This is 12 years later. And when Gail shows up looking and sees Kirby, she's like, they're hiring children at the FBI, because Kirby's an FBI agent. And Kirby's like, I'm 30. And you give these old characters, these previous characters, chance to age and have a life and have moved on to some degree through these events, and because everything comes back to wrestling, Um, you have a character like Triple H's character, for example, who is in one place in 98, and how the character of Triple H has to grow and progress over time. The same way the character of John Cena had to grow in over time. And these characters who are going to be in the business for a while have to grow and change appropriately over time. You know, you have these characters who were one way when they were 20. Now they're reckless abandon, and now they're 45 years old, 25 years later in their career. Now they have a wife and kid to be concerned with. You can use that in story. Probably the best example of this in pro wrestling is Dominic Mysterio. I hate to give him so much credit. Dominic Mysterio, when he was like 8, legit 8. So for the record, he is actually Rey Mysterio's son. Was in a storyline, because there was a storyline between Rey and Eddie Guerrero, God rest his soul, that Eddie was Dominic's real father biologically. Yeah, the storyline was Rey couldn't really get the job done, so wanting a son, Rey's wife hooked up with Eddie and had a son, raised it as Rey's, and kept this secret. And then Rey kept this from Dominic his whole life. So if you go back in time on Peacock or whatever, no affiliation, but if you go back, you can go see the ladder match for custody between Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. This storyline, as weird and stupid as it was when it happened, has been an integral part of Dominic Mysterio's arc as he's become old enough to be a wrestler and has progressed as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Seth Rollins at one point used this against the Mysterios. Hey, your real father, Eddie, Rey's not your real dad. Like, yeah, we know that. We've been there. We've done that storyline already. But now you look how when Dominic became a bad guy, you look at his character change. He acts like his dad, Eddie. He dresses like his dad, Eddie. Mm-hmm. He grew his hair out like Eddie's. He has a mustache like Eddie. So to distinguish him from his father, Rey Mysterio, he dresses like his dad, Eddie Guerrero. And he looks like his dad, Eddie Guerrero. And so this is a storyline that had to exist in the progression that is the character of Dominic Mysterio. As in film, he's like all these characters from Gale to Kirby, even just in their involvement for 2 movies, Tara and Samantha, they have to age and progress, and these timelines have to be held real stern. Otherwise, you lose the meta plot. But to write such a deep meta plot, and mind you, 5 and 6 have completely different writers.
It shows.
Yeah, Kevin Williamson was not the writer of 5 and 6. These are his characters, and they're based off his characters and his lore. And he was involved, but these were the writers, and they had to get in here and do justice to this highly beloved meta plot while adding to it. So yeah, I mean, that task in its own right is very difficult.
Very difficult. And I felt like they did it great. Yeah, star for writing. Yeah. I am iffy. Can you convince me to give it a star for writing?
I would say the ultimate task of the writers of this movie is to do 2 things. 3, maybe. 1, they had to continue the franchise that is well established and well loved. Under any circumstance, that's hard. If you're going to be the brand new Star Trek writer, that's going to be hard. If you're going to come in and be the new Star Wars writer, that has to be even harder. And there's been a lot of criticism on some of the newer Star Wars projects because not everyone can enter a franchise that is established and well loved with well-known lore, right? Like that whole 7 minutes from the beginning of the thing where I run down the bare minimum of the 5 movies previous. That's off the top of my head. Yeah. There's no notes for. I didn't need notes for that. because it's such a beloved story and a beloved overall meta plot.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine a fan like me watching Scream 6. There's a high expectation. This is the second part of a franchise, of a trilogy, just like Scream 2 was. And now you have to do that rematching with obvious changes so that you're not giving me the same movie again while doing the exact same thing, giving me the same movie again. How do you give me the same movie again without giving me the same movie again while trying to give me the same movie again? To do that and do that well, that's kudos to the writers, understanding the history that they have to implement, along with carrying on the franchise to a new level. Preparation for 7. 7 is coming out.
I have seen the preview images. Yeah.
7 has been filmed. It is coming out. There's a release date and everything.
Wow.
7 is coming.
Okay.
So I would say that from writer to writers, the respect that would have to, the respect to the franchise, the writing skill necessary for that would be worth a star all on its own. Plus, all by itself in isolation, the movie was a good movie. It was you said it was a well-paced movie. That means the writing had to be done. That means you had to have a good amount of terror and scare along with levity and comedy. Enough lull moments to lead you into those terror moments and calming moments to let that calm down. You yourself said it was well-paced, and for it to be well-paced, it would have to be well-written.
I'll give you that. So 3 stars thus far for Scream 6. Lastly, we have characterization. You already kind of,
I kind of touched on a lot of this stuff already as I was
the consistency and evolution is expertly done.
It is.
Casting. I loved that they brought characters, that existed in the franchise before.
Yeah.
And so they're already established. We don't have to get to know them. We can just hop into the story. And I like the newer characters as well, like Mindy and Chad.
Mm-hmm.
The core 4 and Danny were particularly well done. As far as consistency, I mostly paid attention to Sam because I commiserated with Sam, like, whoa. This would be a movie for us non-divergent horror writers. Figuring out who your favorite character is. My favorite character was Sam.
And there's a lot to be said about Sam. Because you have to understand the role of Sam. The role of Sam Carpenter was a difficult one to be casted. And I say that because Sam Carpenter is essentially the stand-in to Sidney Prescott. She is the generally speaking, the replacement to Sidney Prescott. And I'll tell you,
Nev Campbell,
there is a very, very, very contentious argument amongst horror fans. Who is your favorite final girl?
Mm-hmm.
Most people I've ever had posed this question to, it boiled down to Sidney Prescott or Laurie Strode. Laurie Strode from the Halloween franchise. You might get some Nancys from Nightmare on Elm Street. You might get some Sallys from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You might get some one-offs from some movies here and
from
there.
the movie Final Girl.
Well,
Like,
there's the movie Final Girls. There's two movies actually. There's Final Girl and Final Girls. Those are two separate movies.
oh, I didn't realize there's a sequel.
No, separate movies, completely separate movies.
Oh,
Just one has an S. I think the blonde is in the one with the S.
mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Because again, they're so similar in title that I forget the separation.
I think that was Final Girl, singular.
Singular.
With the blonde.
The blonde, I think the preview shows the blonde at the restaurant or whatever, the little still image. But when you're replacing, imagine if you had to go into the Halloween franchise and replace Laurie Strode. Imagine the task. Imagine going into the Scream franchise and replacing Neve Campbell's portrayal of Sidney Prescott, who is my favorite Final Girl.
Mm-hmm.
It's a damn near impossible task, but you are now the lead focus and you have to have that charge. From Scream 5, to be clear, people did not like Samantha Carpenter as a replacement to Neve Campbell.
Oh.
So a lot of the reflection of people's opinion of Sam in Scream 6 is reflected on people's opinion of Melissa Cabrera or Barrera, and their view on her in her acting in Scream 5. I think she did a great job in 5. I think she did a great job in 6. But a lot of people, there's kind of toxic fandom in how she portrayed Sam Carpenter in 5, and that was intentionally written into the character of Sam Carpenter in 6. There's a little bit of sort of a meta level to the conversation that is had at the dinner table when they finally accept themselves as a core 4, and they're talking about, hey, I know that we can't relate to how people have talked about you and treated you, but know that we're here for you. That was sort of meta created for the characters to say that to Sam Carpenter, but also people's opinion saying it to Melissa, the actress, about, hey, we know a lot of people have said a lot of nasty things about you in your portrayal of this character. And so there's a lot of that in Scream 6 for that reason. So a lot of the negative opinion of Samantha has to do with the negative opinion of Melissa. And that's just another meta level to the writing.
Interesting.
So yeah, there's a lot of contention on how all these people are connected to the franchise, like the twins, Mandy and Chad being connected to Randy, Samantha being connected to Billy, Tara being connected to Billy by proxy, the return of Gale, 5 including Dewey, Kirby being revealed in 5 to have survived, and then appearing in 6. So there's a lot to the character building and the casting. So a lot of that casting just had to be bring back the old people. And the lack of Sidney Prescott is because the casting has some issues with securing Neve Campbell
due to money.
They didn't
want to pay her enough.
I'm sorry. She's Neve Campbell playing Sidney fucking Prescott. You give the woman whatever money she says.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. That is who she is to this franchise. 99% of Scream fans will tell you Sidney Prescott is the Scream franchise just as much as Laurie Strode is the Halloween franchise. So you take Laurie Strode out of Halloween, why bother?
Why bother?
Matter of fact, don't bother. And a lot of people felt that a movie without Sidney, why bother? Don't bother. And I think for that in consideration, they did a really good job considering they had to rewrite the Sidney parts out. So you had to take that into consideration. They originally wrote this movie with Sidney in mind. And then when the discrepancy with Neve Campbell came up, they had to rewrite this movie.
Okay, so how about POV? So I thought that third omnipresent omnipresent, omnipotent,
Third person omnipotent, yeah.
third person omnipotent, and
Narrator sees all kind of thing.
Narrator sees all. Mostly focusing on Sam, which I thought giving her that little side thing with Danny and the struggle thereof, and then the stalker-isms that she did in the beginning of the movie with Tara, right?
All that makes perfect sense. It all makes perfect sense. Like her being that tied to Tara and how mad Tara was about it.
Yeah.
That interaction, that dialogue between Tara and Sam after the party, because Tara's at a party, she's drunk. Some drunk dude's trying to take him up to her room.
Date rape Frankie, yeah.
Date rape Frankie, and all the friends are there, and they don't allow it. You know, the friends are literally looking out for Tara's best interest, and not letting her go up with somebody who's going to take advantage of her. And then Tara, who happens to show up at just the right time, she literally pulls Frankie like, "Hi, I'm just going to tase you in the balls now," and just tases him in the groin.
Oh, Sam did, yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm just like, this was great. And imagine how pissed off you would be if your sister came in and did that, no matter how good her intentions were. Because mind you, she only gets mad at Samantha. She doesn't get mad at Chad for interfering. She doesn't get mad at Mindy or Mindy's girlfriend. I forget what her name was. I
can't remember either.
But
Annika,
yes. She never gets mad at Annika. She never gets mad at anybody except for Sam, because Sam went to such an extreme. And it's like, you weren't even at the party. You weren't even supposed to be there. And you just show up and embarrass me like that. How dare you? And she even forgives Chad. She's like, no, you were right. I shouldn't have done it. You know, I'm glad you were there. Never said to Tara. I mean, to Samantha. I think she kind of does later on, but never in that moment. And to build these characters and their relationship amongst each other falls into the consistency and evolution that we have on our scale. And that's where my vote really leans. The POV that we switch from at multiple times in this movie really emphasizes that there's a world here. There really is a world of the Ghostface has, in one way, form or fashion, created. And it takes multiple angles from this. Like seeing things at the house with Gail before the Tarpons show up. It's not just about Sam and Tara. It's about everyone, you know. So I love that for this movie.
Okay, so characterization would make I give it a 4. I give it a star. So likewise. That's 4 out of 4 stars. You say knowingly, yeah.
So
okay, so what's your
the question?
Yeah.
What's your favorite character? No. That's not the question. So one of the things that I purposely did not discuss in this movie at any point was the opening kill scene. That makes Scream movie a Scream movie.
The teacher.
Most horror movies have an opening kill scene of some sort, but the Scream opening kill scene is pretty significant. So to give some background to the question, the opening kill scene starts with Samara Reeven's character. She plays a teacher, professor at the college. In film studies professor. She's on a date. So most Scream movies start off with a phone call. And the opening phone call is actually a phone call to the restaurant, but she eventually gets a phone call from her date, her blind date. Excuse me. Her blind date is lost in New York and can't find the restaurant that he picked. Suspicion number 1. And in the process, he lures her outside to help identify where he might be, make sure he's on the right track. So she is so kindly and innocently trying to guide this blind date to where she is. And she ends up in a dark alley alone. And even he goes on the phone as he switches to the Ghostface voices. You teach film study, teaching this exact thing, and still you got lured into an alley, a dark alley, all alone. And she doesn't immediately run out. Why, I don't know. But that's when Ghostface does his opening kill. Normally, the opening kill takes place, and then there's this title scene, and that didn't happen. And I'll tell you, in the theater, it was noticeable that everyone was expecting the title scene to pop up and then get into the regular story, and that didn't happen. What happens is Ghostface sits there for a second, reaches for the mask, and removes it. No cuts. We meet a young man named Jason who takes off the mask, takes off the suit, throws it in his backpack, and walks on the street. Everyone else is innocuous that anything has ever happened. He just walks away and goes home. And the scene carries on as our Ghostface kills Jason and reveals that he's already killed his roommate, Greg. Kills his roommate, Greg. And these two, who wanted to finish Richie's movie, were going to kill the Carpenter sisters at some point. That was their goal. So this was a practice run for Jason. But then Ghostface says, nah, I'm not going to let you do all this. They're mine. And he kills Jason after he's already killed Greg. We don't really meet Greg, so I'm not counting Greg in this conversation.
We never meet Greg. But
we never really meet Greg except for...
My suspicion is that it's Bailey.
That is the Ghostface in that scene? That's not the question.
Okay.
The question I have for you is... we talked about the 9 ghost faces that had come before us. I've already listed them before. They're the 9 ghost faces that are on stage. This movie contains 3 official ghost faces: Ethan, Quinn, and Officer Bailey. Does Jason count as a 4th ghost face? As an official ghost face?
And Greg, because they
now,
were...
Here's an argument. Greg never actually... Here's my argument. Jason counts as a ghost face because he dons the mask, dons the voice, and kills somebody while wearing the ghost face mask. He kills somebody as Ghostface.
And leaves the first.
So, he doesn't leave the first mask. The first mask is left at his house.
Oh.
The scene of that murder where he kills Jason and Greg, that's where the first mask is left.
Okay.
So does Jason count as a Ghostface killer officially? Because although he wasn't part of the original story, the actual story for the Ghostface family or group, whatever, he still committed what I believe is a Ghostface killing. Yeah. Some people don't count him and say that this movie only has 3 Ghostfaces. Some people will include Greg. I actually asked someone on Bluesky. You can always find me on Bluesky, DL Hearn writes. Insert rest of the Bluesky stuff after that. But I asked someone on there, and they said that they count both Jason and Greg because they were part of the group. And even though Greg didn't actually do a killing, he would have. And I don't know if I count Greg because I don't count the would have. But I do want to count Jason. But there's been some dispute about whether or not Jason counts as a Ghostface killer.
I think he does.
Or just solely a Ghostface victim. A lot of Ghostface victims were actually Ghostface killers.
If he hadn't taken out the professor,
I wouldn't have counted him at all.
I wouldn't have counted him. But because of that opening scene, I count him.
I think the opening kill
and
scene,
the way he talks on the phone about doing it.
Yeah.
Not just having the voice changer, like Greg has the voice changer, but Jason talks about how it was less human with every stab and everything like that. And which is why I think it's Bailey that comes and and makes mincemeat out of him. And
there are some great screen channels on YouTube. I think his name is John Cherry. Let me get that name right. Let me look it up real quick. There's a guy whose last name is Cherry. If you look up Scream Videos Cherry, you'll find this guy's channel. He actually does a series, no connection, but shout out to the dude and all the work he does in what is my favorite franchise. He does a series of videos where he will determine through logic who did what kills. Some of them are admitted. Some like, oh, it was great to kill this person and great to kill that person. But sometimes they'll admit to it. Sometimes they're otherwise. You gotta like figure it out. And there are some channels dedicated to doing just that. I'm gonna look them up real quick. Cherry, Scream, Zach Cherry. It is Zach Cherry. So if you love this franchise as much as I do, you probably already know who this guy is. But look up Zach Cherry, fall in love with his channel. Like, he doesn't know who the hell we are, but if you happen to go over there because we said so, go ahead and introduce him to us. Tag us in the comment section so he knows who we are. Because fuck him, why not? Also, go to Dead Meat, because Dead Meat actually featured in Scream 5. Shout out to the crew over at Dead Meat, James A. Janice and his wife, Chelsea Rebecca. They do some really cool, awesome stuff there too. Again, they don't know who we are. We're not associated or affiliated, but I'm just love this franchise, and they do great stuff for horror movies. Check out their kill counts for Screams
kill
1
count
through 6.
is great. Yeah.
The kill count is a great thing. If you don't want to watch the whole movie, go to Dead Meat. Not Dead Meat Presents, same group, different channel though. The kill counts are on Dead Meat. Go watch all the kill counts for Scream. But I count Jason as a Ghostface killer.
I do too.
A lot of people don't, and so it's raining. It has really loud rain. I thought the kids were flooding the kitchen, but no, it's just raining really hard outside. But no, that was my question of whether or not you think Jason counts as a Ghostface. And if you are watching the show and you have an opinion on whether Jason should count, whether Greg should count, or whether if neither of them should count, comment in the bottom, in the comments below. Let us know how many Ghostface killers were in this movie. So when 7 reflects on these actions, how many Ghostface killers should they acknowledge from this movie? I say 4.
I say 4.
And some people say 5. Some people just say the 3. So let us know what you think in the comments right down there.
In the comments, or you can email us at sakoandthemoonpodcast@gmail.com.
And then while you're already typing stuff down there and answering that wonderful question, go ahead and ask the most infamous question from the Scream/Stab franchises. What's your favorite scary movie? And hey, you know what? Maybe we'll look at that list and that'll be the next movie that we decide to review or something like that. Who knows?
Or maybe so.
Yeah, we'll review your favorite scary movie. We'll do that. Yeah, why not? So tell us, what's your favorite scary movie? And mine is Scream, in case you didn't know that. And Sako, what is your favorite scary movie?
Oh, geez. I have seen so many good scary movies in the past 5 years that I'm having a hard time picking. I think there are certain movies that I like certain things about, and that because I have a tendency to binge. And when I binge, the name of the movie kind of goes by the wayside, and
oh yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah. So
so it varies depending on maybe your mood or whatnot.
It varies depending on what I'm looking for in the movie.
That's super fair.
Stonehurst Asylum was fun as an unreliable narrator sort of thing.
Ooh, that sounds like a good topic we should discuss sometime.
Which we will.
Segue.
And then I liked High Tension. I actually like Marianne the best, which is a Netflix series.
And we are still working on how we're going to format that project.
Yeah. Yeah. There are aspects that are done in Marianne that there are just so many of things that meet my bar.
Mm-hmm.
And like creature or antagonists that are too big.
Yeah.
Like they fill the room sort of big, and little packages of flesh that have like teeth and eyes and stuff like that. You know, like I'm
Like the monstrosity at the end of the Substance. Oh boy, that movie. Ooh,
that did not meet my bar. But the Star's favorite movie is the Nightmare on Elm series.
those are good movies. They're classics. And they're classics for a reason.
So
Shout
her
out Wes
final
Craven.
girl is Nancy.
Her favorite final is probably Nancy. If she goes from like the OG, like the original movie, it'll be Nancy.
It'll be Nancy. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for joining us. That's 4 stars for Scream 6. On Friday, which is today. Sorry, my brain is just like all over the place. At 3:30 or 4 or something. Later today, we will be talking about when the bad guy wins.
I mean, it is Friday the 13th.
It is Friday.
We should be discussing when the bad guy wins. And so, just so you know, whenever we go live again or when we put another video out, go ahead and hit the notification bell while we're talking about liking and subscribing to the channel and sharing it with people to let them know how dope we are. Hit the notification bell, set it to all so you know when we pop back up later today to discuss when the bad guy wins.
Yay! And we will see you guys in a few hours.
Yeah.
See ya.